Asterisk asterisk wife slept with younger men for thrill, gets served with divorce asterisk asterisk. I, a 36-year-old man, found out my wife had been cheating on me with college students. It started about 10 months ago after we moved into a new house. The area was residential, but most of the homes were either rented or leased by students, as there were several colleges nearby. When we were house hunting, I never once thought that living in such an area would end up being the biggest mistake of my life. Just last week, I came home to find my wife, on all fours, getting it on with a young college nerd. Yes, I saw it with my own eyes, and it was so disgusting I almost threw up on the spot. I charged at the guy and landed a punch square on his face. He quickly shoved me, scrambled for his clothes, and bolted out of the house. I tried to go after him, but my wife blocked me, pleading for me to calm down. But how could anyone possibly stay calm after catching their wife with another man? I've been married to her for 8 years. We don't have kids, as we both made the conscious decision to remain child-free. Our marriage was relatively stable, with the usual arguments here and there, but nothing major, no red flags, nothing related to cheating ever crossed my mind. We used to live in a small one-bedroom apartment downtown. I had spent years saving up to buy a house in the suburbs, hoping for peace. Little did I know that buying this house would steal away all the peace from my life. My wife is a homemaker, so she's home most of the time unless she's visiting friends or family. During the first 2 or 3 months after we moved in, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The first time I found something odd was when my wife came back from grocery shopping with a guy carrying her bags. I wasn't supposed to be home that early, but when I saw them, she acted totally normal. The guy handed over the bags on the porch and turned to leave. My wife invited him inside for a coffee, but he declined, saying, maybe next time. When I asked who he was, she told me he was just a neighbor who had kindly offered to help with her bags. Before I could ask any more questions, she shrugged it off, saying he was a student who lived 2 houses away, and they only knew each other by face. That day, he saw her struggling with the bags, so he helped her out. The explanation seemed reasonable enough, and I let it go. A little while later, I was returning home and happened to see my wife going into the supermarket across the street. I stopped to pick her up. When I walked in, I saw her nervously chatting with the store clerk, who looked like a part-time student worker. I tapped her on the shoulder, and she looked startled but not guilty, just surprised to see me. The guy smiled and left when he saw me. She told me she was asking him about some products. He wasn't the same guy who had helped her with the grocery bags, he was someone else. I jokingly asked if she knew everyone in the neighborhood. She giggled and said she easily makes friends with people. She even struck up a conversation with the elderly lady at the checkout counter. My wife is indeed very extroverted and loves making friends, so I didn't think much of it. Should I have taken these little things as red flags? These incidents were so small and scattered, seeing her greet people, chat with them, and say goodbye, that I never considered they might be something more. Then, out of nowhere, one day, I caught her cheating. I had gone to the office but realized I needed to stop by the insurance company for some documents. So, I left work early and went home to grab the paperwork. As soon as I stepped into the house, I saw my wife having sex with a young man. He wasn't one of the guys I had met before, though he seemed somewhat familiar. I didn't recognize him specifically, but I could recall the faces of the others I had mentioned earlier. She sat there, covering herself and crying. I was furious and demanded an explanation, but instead of responding, she grabbed her clothes and locked herself in the bathroom. I couldn't wait for her to come out. I was so angry I just grabbed my car keys and drove off. I didn't return until late that night, and when I did, she was sitting on the couch, ready to talk. She looked at me and said, "Let's face it, I need to confess." I sat down, trying to listen. She admitted it was all just for fun and didn't mean anything to her. She claimed that after being with just one man for so long, the attention she started receiving from younger men felt exciting. She couldn't resist the thrill of exploring herself with them. It all began when she made friends with the college students living nearby. The first incident happened with the boy who had helped with her grocery bags. One day, while she was mowing the lawn and struggling with the trash, he saw her and helped again. She invited him in for coffee. She said she was only being nice, but he took it as a sexual advance and started touching her legs. She told me she hesitated at first, but his persistence won her over, and she gave in to his advances. That's how it began, and after sleeping with him, she couldn't stop herself from seeking out others. I asked if she had only slept with 2 guys, but after hesitating, she confessed that the number was closer to 6 or 7. Once it started, she began actively seeking out new men and looking for opportunities to seduce them. Some of the guys even recommended her to their friends, telling them to try her out. Some of them were from the same class, and sometimes they had group sessions of 3 or 4 men at once. Hearing all of this made me feel sick. And yet, after telling me everything, she still had the nerve to say it didn't mean anything. It was just for the thrill. She said, if this is causing you so much trouble, I can stop. Why are you making such a big deal out of it? I asked her if she'd still be this casual if I were the one sleeping with multiple girls half her age. To my shock, she shamelessly said, yeah, as long as no emotions are involved. I couldn't believe she had the audacity to say that. I gave her a disgusted look, and she had the nerve to ask if I was really considering divorcing her over something so petty. At that moment, I wanted to smack some sense into her. I yelled, asking if she even realized the nonsense she was spewing. When she tried to touch me, I pushed her away, wanting no contact with any virus she might have caught from those filthy people. She tried to reassure me, saying it was safe since most of the guys had been virgins before her. That was the final straw. I packed my essentials, phone, laptop, and a few other items, into a bag and left the house. I've been living in a hotel for the past 2 days. Today, I met with a lawyer to start the divorce proceedings. First thing the next morning, I got tested for STDs. All this time, I'd been sharing a bed with a woman who had turned my home into a brothel. I had worked so hard to provide her with a good life, only to find out she had been using it as her playground. Update. I've now served my cheating wife with divorce papers. After spending a week at the hotel, I returned home. She had been calling and texting me non-stop, begging for a chance to make things right. When I told her I had filed for divorce, she thought it was ridiculous. She tried to argue that it wasn't cheating since there were no emotions involved. I asked her to leave the house, but she refused. She even threatened to take the house if I moved forward with the divorce. I was prepared for this. While waiting for the divorce papers to be finalized, I had already met with the loan manager and arranged to sell the house. The mortgage still had 5 years left, but to my surprise, there were plenty of buyers interested in taking over the property along with the mortgage. That's why I intentionally delayed the divorce proceedings. I found a desperate buyer, a professor from one of the nearby colleges, who had a family of 6 and had recently been transferred here. He was eager to find a place, and I sold the house to him. I made some profit on top of what I had already paid for the down payment and 1 year's mortgage. My lawyer advised me to use that money to rent a temporary place and invest the rest so I wouldn't have liquid savings for her to claim alimony. That's exactly what I did. During all of this, I moved out of the bedroom and into the guest room. My soon-to-be ex-wife tried to reconcile, but I told her I needed space and wanted to be left alone. The results from my STD test came back clean, but the doctor advised me to get retested in 3 months, as it could take time for any potential infection to show up. On the day the house sale was finalized, I handed her the divorce papers. She acted completely shocked, as if she hadn't seen this coming. She honestly believed I would just forget everything and move on. I told her that I had moved on, but by myself. I also informed her that we needed to vacate the house since the new owner would be moving in the very next day. She screamed at me, calling me names for selling the house without telling her. She demanded a share of the money from the sale, but it was solely mine. She hadn't contributed a penny. Still, she was adamant about getting the money and even threatened to sue me for alimony. I told her to go ahead. I had already rented a new place and packed my things. As I was leaving, she stood there in disbelief and asked if this was really happening. I said, "Yes, it is." She started crying, pleading that she had nowhere to go if I left her. I told her that wasn't my problem anymore. I had been more than fair in the divorce settlement. I agreed to pay for 3 months of maintenance, and she got to keep the car. I told her that if she wasn't happy with that, she could sue me and risk losing what little she had. Despite all of this, she kept using her tears and sobbing as a last resort, but I didn't give in. The new owner moved in the next day. My soon-to-be ex-wife was still in the house, having packed her things but not yet left. She insisted on meeting the buyer before moving out. When she did, she badmouthed me, claiming I had sold the house without her consent. The buyer, a gentleman, told her that he had verified all the documents and saw that her name wasn't on any of them, so her consent wasn't needed. He didn't care about the personal dynamics between us. She left shortly after that. She still hasn't signed the divorce papers, but my lawyer is following up with her regularly to complete the process. Initially, she threatened to sue me for alimony, but when my lawyer laid out the facts, she backed down. I've received a lot of comments from people saying I missed the red flags and should have seen this coming. I don't take offense to that, but I'm not the type to be suspicious of my partner for simply talking to neighbors or making friends. Some people might do that, but I find it toxic and ridiculous. What's the point of marrying someone if you can't have basic trust in them? I trusted her, and she ruined everything. Since my first post, I've connected with so many men who are going through the same thing. I just can't understand this idea of feeling the thrill. If they are so tired of a stable relationship, they should leave and get a divorce instead of cheating on a loyal partner. Not everyone can move on so easily. There are men like us who take relationships seriously and are deeply hurt by this kind of betrayal. To anyone going through emotional turmoil, feel free to DM me if you need to vent. I'll be happy to listen. I'll update again if there are any new developments.